So today I have a very special guest, Jesus Tundidor. He is the Hialeah President of the council here, and we're going to be going over a lot of things that are happening in this community, which surprisingly, there's a lot of crazy things that are happening. Both are very good, and then some things we got to be looking at in the future because there's a lot of positive developments. But thank you so much, brother, for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian.
So I want to dive into probably one of the most controversial things that that's happened recently, and it's the ban on the RVs and the trailer homes. How is that playing out here in Hialeah? I know it became a very controversial thing here in the community. A lot of residents were fighting against it. Maybe you can touch a little bit on that.
Look, I think it's always great to start with understanding what type of community is Hialeah, right? And Hialeah is a working class community. It's a place where a lot of our parents, our grandparents came from another country, came directly specifically to the city in order to set their roots and create the foundation for future generations, right? So it's one thing always to keep that in mind. However, we need to understand that sometimes in order to grow and to be a better community, a stronger community, it requires change, right? And so we understand that there's a lot of change happening around us. There's a lot of change happening in the city of Miami, a lot of change happening in Coral Gables or Miami Lakes, Doral. And so if Hialeah doesn't adapt to that change, then we will stay behind, right? And that's one thing that I will make sure that never happens. And so again, we have to understand also in the past, we've seen that our community has many needs, right? And one of the needs that we are seeing today, which is not only unique to Hialeah, is housing, right? And so because of this need, right, because of the influx of this immigration that we're seeing, also folks coming from different countries, they're ending up in Hialeah. They can't afford the rents that the market rents that we're seeing today. They create some sort of, little by little, very organically, a black market commodity, right? Which are things like travel trailers for rent, right? Or illegal efficiencies, right? These are things that we're seeing in Hialeah. Again, not unique to us, but is what we're seeing. Now, in that, we also understand that if we didn't do anything about the RV situation and the travel trailer situation today, then they're gonna end up like the illegal efficiencies, right? And so efficiencies started in Hialeah 50, 60 years ago, right? Started off as a need, right? Folks were coming from a different country. They created some space to then continue to bring more family members. Eventually that evolved, right? And it turned into a business. Not a very legal business, but it turned into a business for a lot of these folks, right? And so if we were to make a drastic change today on the illegal efficiencies, it becomes a very big problem, right? On the political front, on the economic front, right? A lot of folks will be displaced. So we're very conscious about that. If we didn't move on the RVs how we did this year, and we continue to let it ride, it would become the same problem, the same size as the efficiencies today, and we didn't want that. Now, on top of that, you factor in the safety issues that these travel trailers bring, right? A lot of these travel trailers are illegally attached into our sewer system, right? A lot of these RVs are not properly strapped down, so God forbid a Category 4 or 5 hurricane hits Hialeah. What happens not just to the folks that live there, but everyone else around them. So we saw so many cons, right? So many issues with the RVs that we decided to move on them. Now, at the end of the day, we understand that there's a need. So when we passed that ordinance to ban living in trailers that reside on a single family home lot, at the same time, we've been working on an affordable housing ordinance that we can discuss later. But at the end of the day, I think the ordinance regarding the RVs was a win for the city of Hialeah. And as a matter of fact, it set the example for many other municipalities. Just the other day, I was with the mayor of Miami Gardens, and he told us that they decided to piggyback off of us and use our ordinance as well to implement there. So again, a huge win, and it sets the groundwork for the future.
It's interesting because like a couple of years ago when I would drive around Hialeah a lot because I had working with clients, you can see there's a bunch of trailers, and that's a business, right? So you have a single family home. You're like, oh, you know what? I can get my family member here, but then it evolves from a family member to now they left, and now I'm bringing in random people. I'm charging them for a trailer $1,500, $2,000. Let's put another trailer in here. And next thing you know, you pass by a single family home, there's 3 trailers there. So I understand the law because it's so, it it goes down a slippery slope, right? Because if you allow one of those trailers in there, it's illegal, right? They're connecting to the sewer system. They're putting more strain on the infrastructure of Hialeah, and those are services. Those people are not being accounted for in the community. So if you get an influx of people that are in here, the strain that's being placed on the infrastructure, it's very difficult. So I understand why you guys passed that law. I know it's controversial. I know some people are going to feel it in their pocketbooks, but then going into what is the underlying issue as to why did this is even happening? And it goes back to housing affordability, where you can look at rents. Now, back in the day, you can get an efficiency for $800, $700. That same price is for one bedroom in somebody's house. And efficiencies are going for $1,500, $2,000. So I know you touched on it a little bit, but how is Hialeah advancing their affordable housing proposals to actually address that underlying issue?
Yeah, and so I'm a big believer in the free market, right? So and it's important to state that, right? It's all about supply and demand. There is very high demand, and again, once the demand meets the supply, right, then we believe that the prices will fall. But nowadays, the prices that we're seeing today, right, that becomes more of the issue than the actual supply. Obviously, with the increase of supply, how I mentioned, it should address that. But in the meantime, right, it takes time to get to that point. So in the meantime, what the city of Hialeah ventured out to do was create an affordable housing ordinance, right, that would serve as a partnership between the city and the private sector. All right, so let me stop there first. We in Hialeah, we have a Hialeah Housing Authority already, right? So that entity, it's a separate entity from the city. That entity focuses on providing subsidized and public housing to the residents of Hialeah, right? So we have a lot of buildings that are owned by Hialeah Housing Authority, and then, as a matter of fact, the city of Hialeah has a couple of buildings as well that we have allowed Hialeah Housing to manage the building for us, right? So Hialeah Housing leads the county in affordability, right? We lead, and we're very proud of that. However, that's only on the public side, right? That's only on the government side. We wanted to take it a step further, right, and create something that enables us to work with the private sector, and that's this affordable housing ordinance. We created a task force first. We invited many industry experts, not just developers, but also developers that focus on affordable housing, right? We had Urban Related, right? We had the folks from Coral Rock. We had our Hialeah Housing director, and we had Miami-Dade County public director as well. And we were able to really craft different incentives that would motivate a developer to build out affordable housing. Now, I can give you more or less the outline, right? We still haven't fully approved this yet at the city council. We passed a resolution that was needed to send to the state because we are amending our comp plan and we're increasing density. And so that has to be sent out to the state. Might take about between 45 to 60 days. Once we receive that approval from the state, then the city council would go ahead and review the actual zoning ordinance and the details that come with it. But pretty much what we're doing is we are increasing our zoning, or I'm sorry, our density from 70 units per acre to 100 units per acre, right? Now, 70 units is the max that you can get in our current NBD zoning, right? Neighborhood Business District zoning overlays. 100 units per acre would be the new affordable housing zoning and density. And then above that is 125 units for our transit-oriented development district. So our TOD and our NBD already exist, so we wanted something right in the middle, which was 100 units per acre. Now, the idea is that with that increase from 70 to 100 units per acre, half of those new units would be considered affordable, and then the other half as an incentive, right, for the developer to build. And now the definition of affordable, right, varies, right, and I want to be able to touch on that in a bit. But in addition to the density incentive, we're going to be also providing parking requirement variances that would be eligible, right, for this specific zoning. Now, putting that to the side, we're also creating a housing fund. And so that housing fund would be a payment in lieu of. So you're a developer, Brian, and you come and you say, hey, I want to take advantage of this affordable housing zoning. But out of the 100 units, you're telling me that 15 of them, 15% have to be affordable, right? At 60% AMI, and we could touch a little bit more on that. Maybe you tell me, Jesus, or City Hialeah, we don't feel like we want that responsibility, so we'd rather contribute into the housing fund, right?
Okay.
So for every unit that you do not want to carry the responsibility or the commitment of affordable rent, then you have to pay into the fund. It's a one-time fee, and now that fund is going to be utilized in different ways. We haven't finalized that yet. However, I can tell you that one of the approaches that we want to take is creating a low-income subsidy program, right? Kind of like Section 8. Let's say you are a resident and you are at 60% AMI. You could only afford $1,200 a month rent, but you want to stay somewhere that the rent is $2,000, right? Well, if you qualify for this program, then the city would go to the landlord and subsidize $800 a month. So you pay the $1,200, meeting the 60% AMI threshold, and the city would cover the balance up to the $2,000 to allow you that opportunity to stay in a nice unit within the city of Hialeah. So again, different options, different things that we're looking at. We don't expect many developers to utilize this ordinance because, again, at the end of the day, it is very difficult to in today's prices and today's construction costs and the premium that we're paying on land, it is very difficult for a developer to make the numbers make sense at a 60% AMI. We understand that, and that could only be done really with subsidies, right? Either at the state level or at the county level. But we feel that if we can get at least 1,000 units, right? 1,000 affordable units through this program, it's a win for the city of Hialeah.
So there's two aspects. So, for example, you were saying that 50%, if I'm going to develop 100 units, 50% have to be workforce housing, right, or affordable housing.
Well, so 50% of the gain of the new units, right?
The new units, okay.
So let's just to make it simple. Let's say we're working on an acre of land, right? And so right now they give you 70 units per acre, the NBD. The affordable housing ordinance will give you 100 total, right? So that new 30, okay, half of that needs to be affordable, and then the other half would be market as an incentive for you. Yeah.
So if I would, let's say, those 50. Now, if I want to just buy out, I can buy that out similar to what Miami-Dade County does for workforce housing. I can give you the money, and that money, those units, those other 50 become market rate, right? And then that money goes into the account.
Correct.
You're doing.
Correct. Yeah. So if you were to pay, let's say, so just to make it simple, then if you go through this program, the city's going to request that 15% of those units, so 15 units out of 100, be considered affordable, right? At 60% AMI. A developer could then, with this program, could just pay off, right? Could do a payment in lieu of, so pay a fee for each one of those units into the fund, and now they become market.
Yeah.
So the idea is also, we don't want to create a fund here that generates money. That is not our intent, right? So that fee is still to be determined, but it's not going to be a couple dollars, or we want it to be a fee that would somewhat deter a developer from just paying into the fund and not building the affordable, right? Because then what's the point? We're just creating a fund here that's generating money, and that is not our intent. Our intent at the end of the day is to create more affordable housing.
So then how does Live Local play into this? So I know that bill, there's a lot of controversy between a lot of municipalities that are fighting back, putting moratoriums against it because of the scale of these projects, the tax abatements. If you want to talk a little bit about that, and is that bill gonna have, I guess, teeth in Hialeah?
Brian, Live Local is a bad deal. It's a bad deal for communities like Hialeah, Flagami, certain parts of Miami, maybe even Sweetwater. Like Live Local does well in communities like Coral Gables, or like Miami Beach, or like Brickell, et cetera, right? Where it is very difficult to find some sort of workforce, right, or affordable housing. Hialeah has always had workforce housing, right? I mean, that's what the market always pushed for, right? Workforce housing. That's what Hialeah has always had. So if you bring in today a Live Local project into Hialeah, Okay, that project, number one, it goes to the highest density possible, right? That the municipality offers. That's number one. Bypasses the zoning process completely. It bypasses the city council. It bypasses a lot of things. The administration gets to deal with that application, right? So there's really no public input, right, in that process. That's number two. Okay, number three, they say with Live Local that if you offer 40% of the units at workforce, meaning 120% of the AMI, you get 75% of your taxes deferred. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that 120% of the AMI means that for a 1-1, you're looking at paying over $2,500 a month. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's
A lot of money, and especially for a 1-1. So, and then on top of that, that property won't pay taxes for a while. So to me is you're doing two bad things, right? If a project like that were to happen in Hialeah, number one, that 40% of workforce is really in Hialeah above market. Let's start there. So our residents are not benefiting at all from any type of affordable rent. That's number one. And then number two, Hialeah is a self-service city. We have our own police, our own fire, our own water and sewer. And so we're not like other municipalities that depend on the county for services. So we have to pay for that. So if you have a big project using the most density possible, right, not paying any impact fees or any taxes for all those people that it's going to house, it's a bad deal for us. So that means the rest of Hialeah needs to carry that cost.
So then what would be, let's say a Live Local project comes towards your way, how would you navigate that? Or is there a way to negotiate it so it's more favorable for the city?
Well, I think there's a reason why we haven't had a Live Local project, right? You have to ask yourself that. And I think developers see that, right? The private sector sees, well, wait a minute, the market rent is not there, right, in Hialeah for us to make this thing work. Because again, if you build something like this in Miami Beach, right, or in Coral Gables, well, that's 60% of units that you have left over could be market, and market in Miami Beach is, God knows, right? It could be a lot of money. It could be $4,000 for a unit, and then all you have to do is just charge $2,500 for the 40% that Live Local requires. You're coming off, making a lot of money, and so developers probably see that in Hialeah it doesn't work. So not only do we not have any utilization of that, we understand that's not going to solve the affordability issue in Hialeah. So this affordable housing ordinance is an alternative to that, right? And that was also a big push for us. Let's create an alternative to Live Local that would be more appealing, right, to the private sector, but also most importantly benefit the residents of Hialeah, which is providing true affordable housing, right? Which is providing that working relationship, public input, right? To give the people that process that we've always had, right? Don't take that away from them. And then that's why we're doing this.
I like the approach that you're taking on it, because when you look at the median salary or income that people are bringing in Miami-Dade County as a whole, it's like what, 65 to 70,000 a year. We're talking about household income. When you factor in rent, it's just paying $2,500 a month. That's 50% of your salary. If you have kids, you have the lifestyle you need to maintain. That's difficult. So I do agree. I think the AMI for that is very high, and I think you got to customize it for the city that you live in, that you operate. I think this is a good approach with how you're going to handle it. I'm curious to see how it's going to evolve, because I really see that there's a massive need for affordability in Hialeah, because the biggest issue is that more people are moving here. They're cramming up together, which then leads into my other question, which I get all the time, the transportation issue. So there are a lot of developments happening here. We're seeing massive pushes here, and people are just wondering, what are the plans that are being talked about to tackle that specific issue?
Yeah, that's tough. That's the $1 billion question that Miami-Dade County has.
I think it's more than $1 billion.
Yeah. So I think it's tough. I would hate for Hialeah to be the only one to carry that burden, but we are trying to figure out different methods of transportation, right? we've put a big focus also on micromobility, especially when we talk about first and last mile off of a transit station, right? But I think that part of our plan, which is the Hialeah 2050 plan, right? And then we could talk about that a little later, is how can we increase connectivity in Hialeah, right? How can we make it more mobile, right? For more walkable, right? For our residents in Hialeah. You know, if we want to create a community around mass transit, right? Which has always been a goal of mine, right? Is let's create a community around mass transit and be able to offer an alternative to the young professional and tell them that they don't need to live in Brickell, right, or down south. They could live here in Hialeah at a third cheaper than what they'd be paying down there, and it's new product, right? And so if we want to be able to do that, we need to make sure that the infrastructure is in place, right? Because in high density areas, normally there's less parking, right? And because you rely more on the mass transit or on the public transportation or the bus, et cetera. So what we want to do as a city first is address those things, right? Before well, at least we should, right? Before we start building up and start cramming and putting the cart before the horse, right? And so we've been making investments on our trolley system, right? So the mayor had signed an order to make sure that all the trolleys are free for Hialeah residents, right? So that's a big deal, right? Now, in the future, we're going to look to maybe, do we need more trolleys, right? Do we need to expand the routes, right? Things like that. That's number one. Number two, we also made an investment on the transportation network companies, or TNCs, ride sharing, which is more like the freebies of the world, right? So we have a freebie system that is completely free of charge for our residents, right? And we started off with, I think it was 2 Tesla models, and then little by little, because of the demand, that's been increasing, right? So we're trying to cover more of the city. So if we can continue to invest in the trolley system, or we can continue to invest on our different ride sharing approaches, right? And then also invest in micro mobility, things like scooters, right? Things of that nature, bicycles, right? Electric bikes, et cetera, that we've seen in places like Coral Gables. I think it'll eventually make our city more walk friendly, more increased connectivity in different aspects. You know, we are also conducting studies in creating an analysis or assessing our parks and our schools, right? And we're trying to determine, the level of safety, right? Going off of the traffic that we have in Hialeah, and depending on what we find, if there are areas that are more at risk, then we create more barriers. At least that's the idea, right? Let's create more barriers around those high risk areas, schools or parks, but then also increase the micromobility in those areas. We actually have a plan that connects all of our schools and all of our parks together and makes it more walkable, makes it more open to again, scooters and bikes, et cetera. But now the goal now is to figure out, what I'm saying is, what are the high risk areas and how can we make it safer to increase that connectivity?
So Miami-Dade is making a push to do that with the underlying project that goes away from Brickell all the way to Dayland South. And I'm curious to see how that rolls out, because Hialeah is so tight, so packed, right? Like, how would you be able to fit that through, Bottom Wheel with the traffic, especially how people drive in Miami, which is, the whole other level here. You need bulletproof vests on the streets here.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the underline. So in Hialeah, maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but we are looking to create a High Line, right?
Okay.
So instead of an underline, we're calling it the High Line, and so it's actually through East 25th Street. So where the racetrack starts, which is on East 4th, on East 25th, you're going to go all the way down to the transfer station where the metro station is at, which I believe it's about East 10th Avenue.
Okay. Yeah.
So between East 4th and East 10th Avenue on East 25th Street, the metro station goes by there, right? So we want to mirror what the underline has been able to do, and I believe it's roughly about a mile long from where it starts in the transfer station to where we want it to end. And again, that's going to be a huge thing, right? We just recently, we expanded our TOD on that corridor on East 25th Street. Before, it used to start from East 10th Avenue up into Lejeune. And so now we've expanded it only on East 25th Street from Lejeune all the way to East 4th. And so it pretty much follows the projected, right, the proposed Hialeah Line, and that's going to be a huge thing, right? We're going to have, the idea is hopefully we'll have an increase in density, but a combination of mixed use projects on East 25th, and then they're going to have a beautiful site in what we're going to consider the Hialeah Line. So we're going to create a committee for it. We're going to have different industry experts, community leaders, business leaders, part of that committee to help us in the planning phases.
So then what's going to happen with Hialeah Casino, right? So what are the plans for that? And, what's going on?
So there's a lot of great stuff happening with the Hialeah Racetrack and Casino. Right now, we're starting to see some 3-story garden-style apartments go up, and then the idea, right, that they have proposed, it's a great vision, right? It's a vision that entails a combination of residential, commercial entertainment, right? And so when we talk about the Hialeah Park and the Hialeah Racetrack and Casino, we're talking about a historic piece of land. We're talking about over 200 acres of land, right? I don't think you're not going to find anything like that in Miami-Dade County. So whatever they do, they got to make sure they do it right, right? And then whatever the city council approves, we got to make sure we approve it right, because we only get one shot at this, right? And so again, the idea is that on East 4th, that side, they're going to build most of the residential, and then everything on Palm Avenue, most of it is going to be commercial entertainment. And again, I think it's perfect, because it goes back to what we're saying, right? Creating a community around mass transit. Hialeah Park has its own metro stop, right? It has its own metro station stop, and it's perfect. The folks that are going to be living inside the park are going to be literally at walking distance to the metro station. A lot of folks from down south, right, or other parts of the county are going to be able to come to the historic Hialeah Park, and it's just a metro station right away, right? And so it's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. I also want to note that because there is always a lot of controversy, and there's certain people that like to make a big deal about stuff, but none of the historic buildings or anything of that nature is going to be touched. That's all going to be protected. The flamingos, right, the very famous and popular flamingos, are going to be protected, and so it's going to be a great thing for the east side of Hialeah.
I think that sounds very similar to what's going on in the city of South Miami, where they're making a very big push with the redevelopment Sunset Place, City Hall, and we're going to see how that project pans out. But I think that's the future of Miami, where we're becoming so densely populated here that there needs to be these little urban centers within these municipalities where people can go and have a good time and they have things to do, because, it's bad business when everybody leaves your city, goes somewhere else to spend the money, but then they come back to just sleep here, and they're not really spending quality time with their family. So
let me tell you something. I mean, I'm guilty of that, right? And not just myself, but the mayor and the rest of the council members here in Hialeah, where unfortunately, when we want to have a good time, when we want to go out to a good dinner, or we want to go and have some entertainment, 9 times out of 10, we leave Hialeah, right? And that was like that. Me as a kid growing up, all of our friends, we would end up leaving and go to either Miami Lakes for Main Street, or we'll go to Doral, or whatever the case is. And it's sad, because in Hialeah, you have a population that wants that, right? You have a population that works really hard Monday through Friday, and they wish they can have a nice restaurant or a great entertainment area just a block away from their home. And so I think we're starting to see that, right? We're starting to see that with developments like in Westland Mall, developments happening in East Hialeah, and now with what we're seeing in the racetrack. I think the future is going to be very bright for the city of Hialeah.
I think so too. Is the city incorporating any new ideas when it comes to speeding the permitting process and the whole review? I know for different people I talk to, that's something that they would like to see more expedited, for permits. Is there something within the administration that you're thinking about, or?
So the mayor has obviously put a lot of emphasis on that. Let's make sure that developers or the private sector isn't losing time in our permitting process, right? Because we know that in construction, time is money, right? And so that's always been an emphasis. But I can tell you that from hearing back from the private sector, right, surveying the different applicants. I mean, Hialeah has one of the best permitting processes there is in Miami-Dade County, hands down. I know that we are putting more pressure, we are putting more emphasis, but also when it comes to the affordable housing, we're going to make sure that at least 20% of the time is reduced with certain safeguards that we've been implementing. I can tell you that not too long ago, Hialeah was probably one of the last municipalities to do so, but we've implemented the Tyler system, right? So it's a new technology that pretty much makes everything a lot cleaner, a lot faster. Folks can submit their plans online and then have the plans distributed at the same time to all the necessary departments, right? Back then, I mean, it was, and it still happens now with bigger projects, but back then you would have folks coming into City Hall with like loads of plans and site plans, et cetera, and they'd give it and they drop it off to one department, and then that department had to finish before giving it to the next one. And so, we've made a lot of investments in that aspect of it, and we expect a lot of great things from that.
So the Hialeah 2050 plan, can you break that down? What does that look like? What's going to be the positive features of that plan, and what can residents expect for this?
Yeah, look, I think a plan in general is always very important. I'm a planner, right? I like to plan things out, right? I like to plan my life out for the next 20, 15, 10 years, and that's just how I do it. And I think there's other people that don't, right? There's other people that like to shoot on the fly, and that's great, and they're successful. But I do feel that having some sort of framework is important, right? Because it gives you a guiding star, right? You can kind of maybe deviate once in a while, right, from the actual path that was created, but then you always remember, oh my God, like I actually have to go this way, right? Because that's what the plan says. But with the Hialeah 2050 plan, it's a plan for the next 25 years. It's a plan that creates more mixed use. It creates an environment not just for the elderly and those that are retired, but also for young professionals, right? It creates, like how I mentioned earlier, entertainment districts in different pockets of the municipality. It puts more emphasis on infrastructure, right? Infrastructure is something a lot of people don't want to talk about. And it's unfortunate, right? Because without the infrastructure, you don't have residential, you don't have commercial, you don't have anything. And so we put a lot of emphasis on that. We create a plan, right? We say these are the pump stations that we need to address in order to make sure that our water and sewer department is working efficiently, and that we can continue to have more development and more businesses in Hialeah. It also creates a plan on determining how many more trolleys do we need to increase public transit, right? It also focuses on our park system, right? Well, what is the land that we have underutilized, and how can we make it better? And so the Hialeah 2050 plan is something very exciting. We've been having these mini town halls throughout the city with our planners to get feedback from the community, right? And again, some of the feedback that we got, which is very important, that actually was brought up in the city council the other day, was we need different uses for businesses. And that's such a great point. There's certain pockets of the city where you look to your right and you look to the left, and all you see are medical facilities, right? Different, and that's fine, because that's a business, and then there's a need for it, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be popping up. But maybe strategically you can place them in different parts of town and not in others. And so this Hialeah 2050 plan is going to address all that, is going to increase micromobility, connectivity in our community. We are a very, very dense community. 33012, that zip code is has the highest density in all of Miami-Dade County, and it's right here in Hialeah. So we have to factor in all those things and make sure that we could incorporate all the needs into that plan. Now, we hope to roll out the plan and finalize the plan next year when the city Hialeah turns 100 years old. It's a big,
Wow.
big deal. And then, so we're going to roll that out, and we're going to have three different types of goals. We're going to have short-term goals, we're going to have middle, and then we're going to have long-term goals. And again, it's going to be a great thing.
So you gave me this when we came in. So this is proposed housing types. Can you break this down? Is this like ADUs or what are we looking at here?
So-
It's interesting.
So the prototype, it's also going to be part of the Hialeah 2050 plan, right? And again, the idea is also to address mid-level housing. So it's not the single-family homes, it's not the high-density apartments, but it's the right in between, right? Smaller units, maybe duplexes, maybe triplexes, right? So what we want to do is create a handful of prototypes. I think it's maybe 4 of them, right? Where the prototypes are, in essence, it's a plug and play. So you want to come in now and you want to build a duplex, right? And so what the city's going to do is they're going to offer you first, hey, before you go any further, here's our prototype for duplexes. You're going to review it. You're going to have your architect review it. If you like it, then it's yours for a very small fee that you would have to pay the city. But now what does that do? That saves you time and it saves you money, right? And so the idea is, let's make it faster, right? Let's make it faster by offering these pre-approved prototypes to the private sector, right? For again, it's gonna in essence expedite the permitting process, and it's gonna save you money on the architecture and design.
So you're telling me that there is a potential opportunity in Hialeah where I'm an investor, I buy a piece of land or I may buy a dilapidated single family home, and you guys are going to roll out pre-established plans like for them to build duplexes or quadplexes. And if I want to pay you guys a fee, then I could just build on it. And that's pretty much it. I don't have to spend all the money with the site plan approvals. I don't have to do anything.
That's pretty much it. That is correct.
It's ready to go.
Yep.
What is the process of, so what fits in that though? So, okay, can it be a single family residence that I buy and knock the house down? Can it be a small little parking lot? What zoning type does this apply to, or is this for every type of property?
Yeah, so it depends. It depends on the property, right? So for depending on the prototype, it tells you the required size of the land, right? So I think the most minimum, and we'd have to look back, I believe is 5,000 square feet, right? So in a 5,000 square foot lot, we would give you the opportunity, right, to build a duplex, right? And so in that prototype, you'll have the parking that's necessary, right, along with the floor plan and the layout needed to move forward with that. Now, if there's a change in zoning, then you have to go through the zoning process, right? For example, a triplex would be considered an R3. A single family home is an R1. If you buy an R1 and let's say the house is destroyed and you got to knock it down anyways, but you want to build a triplex on it and use our prototype, you still have to change the zoning on that land.
Okay, so basically, if the zoning already allows for that, this is just, hey, single family residence, you can build this. If it has this, you could, single family, I'm assuming it's going to be a duplex or,
Correct. Correct.
And then, okay, so this is interesting. I mean, this could be very interesting. So this is going to, in my opinion, I think this is going to raise values for properties.
Yeah.
Big time for residents.
And this, we also kept in mind the small developer, right? The small guy, right? Like you have a lot of big developers in this community, right? In this county, in this state, right? This prototype is not going to be for those big developers, right? This is going to be for the smaller developer that's trying to either get their first start, or maybe this is just the market that they decide to work with. So we also kept that in mind in the development of this prototype.
Will these have any affordable housing requirements on it, or will this be like market rate rents?
This is going to be market rate.
Market rate.
Yeah. Now, again, the affordable housing program is going to be something completely different from this, which is something that requires, or that would, in other words, not necessarily require, but entail more density, right? And we're talking about 100 units per acre versus a duplex. So it'll be different in that aspect.
Have you seen are other municipalities in Miami-Dade doing something like this or no?
That's a good question. I think maybe the city of Miami might be doing something like this. Our zoning director, this was obviously her idea when it came to this. But funny enough, watching one of your reels on social media, you had mentioned something about, I think it was the city of Orlando, as a way to address the affordable housing issue, they did develop some prototypes as well, specific to the ADUs, right? So that was
Oh,
probably
that's interesting.
the first time I heard about it outside from our zoning director was in your on your page.
All right, that's cool, man. All right, that's it. You know, it's interesting because social media is one of these things that we're all learning information, right? So it's pretty cool. I'm glad. That's interesting. So this is a project here that I think it's actually going to take off pretty well. I can easily see small time developers coming in, taking advantage of this, building the housing that's needed. You don't have to have a trailer park in your front lawn. You know,
yeah.
you can actually start building this.
Yes.
So what are some projects that you're most excited about as we look into the future of Hialeah, and where do you see, well, I'll hold that question back. What are the projects that you're excited about going forward?
So I think what's going on in the in Westland Mall, it's a pretty big deal, right? Look, at face value, when someone says, "Hey, we're going to make some changes to Westland Mall," I think the folks that have been in Hialeah for a long time, their initial reaction is, "Wait a minute, what?" Right? Because it's a landmark, right? But what we have to then remind folks is that the people that are coming in to make this development, to do this development over Westland Mall, it's not a fly-by-night person, right? It's Codina and Partners. They're the same folks that developed all the very cool places in Doral, right? And continue to build all throughout the state of Florida. Those are the folks that are coming here now, right? And we have to understand that retail in certain aspects is a dying business, right? You have Sears going out of business. You have possibly maybe even JCPenney going out of business, right? And so there needs to be something done as a result of that, right? In a positive light. And so this is it. We're going to see some new housing. We're going to see some new restaurants. We're going to see some new retail. As a matter of fact, also the Codina and Partners, they're also offering an amphitheater, right? That's going to be for public use, meaning anyone can walk in there if there's ever an event that the mall ends up having, whether it's a concert or a performance in that space, it's going to be open to the public for free. So those are all things that are very exciting. You're going to be bringing in a new demographic, young professionals that want to move to Hialeah and then spend their money in Hialeah, right? And that's a big deal. And we have to also remember these developments help the city stay afloat, right? We don't plan on raising taxes anytime, right? So if we don't plan on raising taxes, then we need to make sure that there's a balance, right? And that balance is creating new buildings, seeing new construction. Whenever a building goes up, we know that that's additional tax revenue for the city of Hialeah that's going to go and pay for all of our services. So I think the Codina Westland Mall project is something very, very exciting that's going to change the city of Hialeah big time. It's on 49th Street, the main artery of Hialeah, right? And it's right next to the Palmetto. So it's going to be huge, in my opinion. I think that's something very exciting to look forward to. We also have the Hialeah racetrack, how we just mentioned earlier today. It's going to change the I don't want to say the fabric of the city, but the branding of the city, right? I think we're making that evolvement. We're changing and we're evolving from what it was before to now a competitor in Miami-Dade County, where people are looking to Hialeah and saying, hey, I either want to invest in Hialeah or I want to live in Hialeah, right? And that's a big deal. Look, Factory Town that we haven't talked about. Factory Town is on the east side of Hialeah. It's about 10 acres. You have a very great team and led by a woman called Avra Jane, who decided to take a chance on Hialeah on empty industrial space. And she has one of the biggest festivals ever right there in that location. She'll have different music festivals during Art Basel or during Ultra Week. And for Christ's sakes, I was telling folks the other day, I was shocked. I mean, when one of these festivals was going on, I had a group of friends text me at 2 a.m. telling me, hey, are you up? We're on our way to Hialeah. And normally it's the other way around, right? 2 a.m., everyone's looking to leave and go somewhere else. So you start to see all these investments happening in Hialeah. And so the way that Hialeah has been looked upon, it starts to change, right? And so again, it goes back to the branding. And so all those things are very, very important for the city and for the future. Now, we are working on certain projects with regards to affordable housing, right? I can't share too much at this moment because it's still in the planning stages. But the idea is, I started to look for underutilized private land, right? I started driving around town and I started identifying very big parcels of land that still reside within the city of Hialeah that are underutilized. And so I started playing liaison, right, and connecting the landlord with someone in the private sector, with a developer, to see how they both can work together in hopes of creating affordable housing in Hialeah. So that partnership, again, at a very high level, right? Terms change all the time, but you would think that the landlord has a need, right? The owner of that land has a need. It could be a church, right? Maybe that church needs a new church, right? And so a developer comes in and says, hey, I will build you a new church, but give me some land so I can create some affordable housing. And then now that landlord has a new church and then is a partner in that new deal for affordable housing. So it's a win-win. It'll be a win-win for the landlord, it's a win-win for the developer, and it's a win-win for the city because now we get affordable housing that we can offer to our residents.
I think that's an innovative approach because there is a lot of land that's being underutilized, like churches or other parcels that people just buy and they just hold on, they sit on it. It's similar to like buying a domain that they just sit on forever.
Correct.
That's, believe it or not, that happens a lot in real estate where people just buy land, they sit on it for years, and then eventually maybe they develop on it or they don't. So I think that's an innovative approach. What you're doing is going out there and you're proactively looking for the deals, setting it up, working to get affordable housing because it's desperately needed. Are you seeing any positive reactions from these owners that you're reaching out to do this type of deal?
Yeah, of course. Because look, it's all about identifying the need, right? And that's in anything, And once you identify the need, then if you have a solution to either address that need or fix that problem, 9 times out of 10, people are going to be open to it. Right. Again, the details of the term, right? They have to, they're going to fluctuate and whatever the case is. But I think the key ingredient there is identifying what the need is or what the issue is and coming up with a solution.
So when your career is done as a council member, and I'm sure you're going to go on to bigger and better things here, because you're very young, what's the legacy that you want to leave here in Hialeah?
That's a great question, man. I was born in Hialeah. My mom and I lived here for a long time, and well, she still lives here on the east side of Hialeah, and I moved out to the west, and I have my family now. And I went to school here. I rode bike in our streets, and I played in our parks, and my wife and I got married here. We got married at Immaculate Conception, and this is the city that we call home and where we're raising now our 3 daughters. And so what I would want, right, not to get into the details of it, I think we got into enough details, is I would want to leave the city better than what it was when I was there, right? Or when I was growing up or when I was a council member, right? I want to make sure that I can leave behind something that everybody could be proud of and where quality of life is always a priority, regardless of whatever country you come from, right? The quality of life in this town will always be a priority. We understand that Hialeah will always remain a working class community, and I hope that never changes, right? Because it's part of the fabric of who I am, right? Of who all of us are. But what I don't want people to think is that Hialeah is just like Cuba or Hialeah is just like a third world country, right? No, Hialeah is part of the United States, and because of that, we're going to make sure that it's the best city in all of Miami-Dade County.
Well, I think you're doing a great job and it's going in the right direction. We'll see how Hialeah shapes up in the coming years, but I want to thank you. And if you guys enjoy this type of content, like, subscribe, give us a follow. And if you want to follow Jesus, let them know where they can.
You can find me on social media, Councilman Tundi, and we're going to welcome you with open arms.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Here, brother.
Appreciate it.